A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators. Welcome back to MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. I'm your host, Trina, and today's episode is one many of you have been waiting for and asking for. We're pulling back the curtain on a topic that so many of us have lived firsthand, but never had a name for it until we were already in the wreckage. I remember referring to it as an earthquake, and that's exactly what it was, an earthquake. But to everybody else, we do refer to it as bomb drop. So anyway, but today we are going to talk about the MLC Playbook EXPOSED. We are diving deep into the stages of a midlife crisis, starting not at the so-called bomb drop, but we're going back 2 or 3 years before it. And why? Why are we doing that? It's because that's when the real story begins. So let's go back to the very beginning, a few years before bomb drop. The midlife crisis doesn't start with an affair, doesn't start with a sports car. It's not a sudden move to Bali. It starts slowly, subtly. It's a silent unraveling. About 2 years, sometimes three years or so, before the big betrayal, before the earthquake, before the bomb drop. Many partners report sensing a change in their spouse. It's often brushed off at first. They don't even realize it. They just think, they're distracted with work. Maybe their spouse has lost interest in family traditions. Kids are getting older. They start talking vaguely about wanting more out of life. And these are some of the things you're going to see in that early stage. And you're not going to realize. A lot of folks just don't realize and connect the dots until later. But you're going to see a little increased irritability. You're going to see a little increased restlessness. There can be subtle distancing emotionally, sexually, conversationally. Just they start to slowly become a little different. And it's easy to say, to attribute that to maybe they're just going through a hard time at work, or they're tired, or there's this, or there's that. There's always something, you may notice a loss of empathy. They may seem less tuned into your feelings. There can be identity confusion. Like, is this all there is? Becomes their new thing. They may start changing their wardrobe, become obsessed with youth, or suddenly feeling resentment about the very life they helped create. That's the first 2 or 3 years. Then they're slowly going to get into escape and avoidance stage. This is where they become uncomfortable in their own skin, but they don't know why. Rather than turning inward, they project outward. You might start hearing things like, I feel trapped. I don't know who I am anymore. I need space to figure things out. I just need space. Suddenly, you feel like you're the jailer. The marriage, they refer to the marriage almost as their prison. And the life you built together becomes the scapegoat. And you're sitting there going, wait, what? Everything's so fine? And it just doesn't make sense. How could this beautiful life you built together, often people are at this stage a little more debt-free, They are really solid in their relationship with lots of, thriving friends and family and kids and careers, and everything's going great. But your spouse doesn't see it that way, which is completely just, you just don't understand. Why would they not see it the way you do? Anyway, this is where they might start taking up new hobbies on their own. They'll dive headfirst into escapism, such as excessive workouts, working late, risky investments, emotional withdrawal. But sadly, this is where they're just doing anything to avoid facing themselves. So they just create a situation where they are trying to be busy, busy, busy all the time, looking for something to fill that void that's inside. And if there's someone on the sidelines validating that new identity, well, drumroll, enter the affair partner. It can start out emotional or physical. And this is what becomes their new mirror. This new mirror is a fantasy version of themselves reflected back. But make no mistake, this stage is not about love. It's about escape. Escape from them, from the prison of their marriage, from the responsibilities they have as a husband and father. It's an escape from that, and they're not looking in that mirror, they're looking in the new mirror. So then we have the bomb drop or the earthquake. It can happen over a text. It can happen over a cold conversation. It can sometimes through third parties. And sadly, we have people on here that have woken up in the morning and not a text, a Post-it note will be in the kitchen by the coffee cup. I've left. People will come home from work and see closets emptied out. Boom, gone. No explanation whatsoever. So, almost 99.9% of the time, if you hear this phrase, well, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Well, you know what? That's the first sign of a midlife crisis, and that is zombie apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. That is MLC 101. That's the first thing in the playbook that every single one of them so far, that everybody says, I'm in love with you. Oh, no, wait, how does it go? I love you, but I'm not in love with you. All right. Next things they'll say is, well, I need to find myself. And totally you're going to hear, I haven't been happy for years, sometimes 10 years, 20 years. Maybe we never should have gotten married. And don't take that personally. This is just like, it's so crazy because this is what they say. And it is just the strangest thing. And the truth is, they haven't been happy with themselves. And you wouldn't have known that. But instead of facing that, they burn it all down. And for you, it becomes trauma. It becomes betrayal. And it's completely disorienting. Well, they leave or they emotionally check out. Some spouses in this, we call them stay-at-home spouses. And they're still having their midlife crisis, but they remain home. But emotionally checked out big time. So you might have a spouse that is already left and living with an affair partner, or they may be at home but emotionally checked out. Again, do not take this personally because this is the best they can do. The person you knew is gone. They have now been replaced by someone cruel, detached, and often rewriting the past. This is called narcissistic rewriting. And no, your spouse or partner may not have been a covert or grandiose overt narcissist before, but it's extremely common during midlife crisis that they start exhibiting narcissistic traits. So this is what happens, and it happens to almost everybody. And anyway, they call it narcissistic rewriting. It's a tactic to justify their exit. Suddenly, the history they shared with you, completely fake. You're too controlling. You never made them happy. The gaslighting, boom, kicks into overdrive. They cannot be the bad guy. So they can't go around town letting folks know that they are the ones that had an affair out of the blue. They have to make it seem as if the spouse had a whole bunch of problems, and oh my gosh, they had to leave the marriage because it was just so awful. You were abusive and all this stuff. Anyway, you become the bad guy. So now, not only you, the left behind spouse, not only now are you the victim and the betrayed partner, you have become a bad guy. This is where you start to see restraining orders slapped on you and things like that, or attempts at restraining orders. But all this, it's just completely overwhelming. And like, where did this come from? Anyway, this is a whole nother thing. So that's that stage. Then you're gonna get to the midlife crisis. Person will have their reckless little phase. This is super sad, and so for so many of you spouses, I know we feel like, wow, just to sit by and see your spouse self-destruct and take a match to their life and blow it all up. This is after the bomb, they enter what they call the reckless phase. This is where common behaviors are affairs, often with someone either much younger, emotionally needy. This person is often has borderline personality disorder, NPD, bipolar, schizophrenic. They are a complete affair down, very common. And this is shocking to everybody, shocking to your friends, your children, your neighbors, your family. It's just crazy. So that's the first thing. Then you're going to see financial irresponsibility, lavish spending, impulsive investments, and identity whiplash. One week they might be focused on yoga, the next is motorcycles, the next it's this, that. They're just going to just like out of the gate start a whole bunch of new interest and become really drop their old habits and not old habits, sorry, old previously long held hobbies for new hobbies, which is really strange. Even interest, folks that would generally maybe, have interests like football, now no interest in watching football or soccer. Complete turnabout. They act like teenagers, untouchable, grandiose, obsessed with image and validation. They may act like you never even existed. Cut off their friends, they cut off their family, they cut off their children. And the worst part, society often romanticizes this. They call it what do you call it? A midlife transition. And that, you know what? A midlife transition is great. That's all fine, as long as there's no collateral damage. We're all for personal growth, living authentically. That's hugely important. As a matter of fact, all around my house, I've ever since I was a little kid, I love quotes, and I always have like chalkboards and quotes around the house, like live authentically, be the best you can be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now I realize to somebody who is having a hard time looking in the mirror, that might be the worst thing for them to have to live around because I feel really bad. It was probably a constant reminder. So that's too bad. But yeah, that is this is not a midlife transition and the crisis. That is what it is. And yeah, this is where your spouse will go around expecting people to be super happy for them. Like, hey, I have found the love of my life. Aren't you happy for me? I'm finally so happy. And you just look at them like, wait, what? Uh, so that's it, you guys. That is a stage. But fantasies do not last. And eventually, the new supply that they're with starts to crack. The high that they've been on, it starts to fade. And the sad thing, that inner void that they were escaping from and trying to fill up, it's still there. And now all the glitter is falling down to the floor, and that inner void is still there. And that's really sad. And this is the crisis within stage. It doesn't look like an awakening yet, but it's the first moment of discomfort without a new distraction. And it starts to scare them. They'll start to experience depression, isolation, panic over aging or health. And they're going to attempt to reframe their narrative with new people in an attempt to, fill up that void. It's horrible. They may even test the waters, like by sending you accidental text messages, and they'll might reach out to you, trying to be nostalgic or try to create a triangulation between mutual friends and their children or you. And this is not about reconnection. This is not about guilt or remorse. It's not about reconciliation. This is them trying to do ego repair. And again, fill that void. Then they're going to reach that fork in the road, stagnation or awakening. And this can be a really dangerous stage for some folks. For some, they may stay stuck in that loop of blame, denial, and avoidance, and they'll just stay there. And they're just going to age into bitterness. And they never truly face what they did or who they became. That is like a stagnation, and they'll just stay there, which is really sad. And that becomes the rest of their life. And they realize it, but they're just too embarrassed and ashamed to take the other fork in the road, because it's embarrassing. And then there are a few, very rare, that will have the awakening stage and hopefully grow from that. It's really quiet, it's private, it's painful. They'll begin to see the wreckage that they've caused. And yes, they feel shame, they feel grief, they're embarrassed, they may try to make amends, not always directly, and sometimes it's too late. Sometimes you've moved on and you're gone, and the kids are gone and don't want to hear anything about it. That parent has destroyed their trust, and for some, it just is too painful. So their awakening does not guarantee a return, nor should it. This is about them finally meeting their true selves years after the destruction. And remember, it can be up to 10 years. That's a long time. But the key there is if they weren't living authentically, they truly need to look in the mirror and live their authentic self. And their authentic self, it may not be the spouse you married. It may be a totally different type of person. So, but the important thing is everybody deserves to live an authentic life, and they need that. They need to be authentic. But remember, you're here because we want to focus on your awakening. That's the one that matters. Your awakening is the real truth. The MLC Playbook is totally predictable. It's like we said, it's scripted. It is so predictable. It is uncanny. But you know what? What's not scripted is your recovery, your awakening, and your healing. Because while your spouse or partner may be lost in fantasy, you are building something real. You're building it from within yourself. You're stronger. You've got clarity. You have insight. You've been exposed and seen probably the worst. I hope to God this is the worst betrayal that you are ever going to experience in your life. And you have come through. You're listening to this podcast today. You're probably involved in several of our other groups that provide support and education and awareness. You're not just surviving. You are decoding the pattern. You are helping others name what they're experiencing, and that's powerful because now you have this awareness and getting a skill set so that you know what to look for in the future. You can be a shining light, a lighthouse, if you will, for your spouse or partner as they go through their stages and awakening. But please remember, they are on their own path. There's nobody can help them really. They have to go through everything themselves. But you are not on that path, and you need to take care of yourself and be there for your children or your family and stay strong. So if you're listening today and thinking, wow, man, that's exactly what I lived through, newsflash, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you're not responsible for their breakdown. But you are responsible for what you do next. And I know this audience, and I know your power. So thank you so much for joining me today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. If this episode resonated with you, please share it. Please rate it. Please, give us some comments and follow our show. We're building a movement, and your voice matters. Until next time, protect your peace. And remember, the playbook may be common, but you are one of a kind. So live your life, be authentic. And thanks again for joining us today. Thanks again, you guys, for tuning into Midlife Crisis Bomb Drop and Beyond. We have passed over 1,000 downloads. We have hundreds of subscribers, if not over 1,000 or 2,000 already. So I just want to say thank you. how grateful I am for every single one of you that's listening and that has taken the time to be interviewed and appear on this show. I have a waiting list of people I'm trying to get to, so hang in there. We will get to you. Um, I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad to hear that everybody is enjoying the show so much. And I know it provides a lot of support. So thank you so much for that. And if you've been through a midlife crisis or been impacted by someone else's and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to me, Trina Laird at gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook at MLC Bomb Drop or Instagram, MLC Bomb Drop. So reach out however you like. Your voice matters. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel seen, heard, and understood. Until next time, take care and keep standing in your truth. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. And here's a little promo of our next episode on affair partners. That fantasy relationship with the AP, those relationships often burn out because the high can't last. The AP starts demanding more. The MLCer starts resenting the reflection. The real life starts to show up: money problems, legal issues, estranged children, health scares. And suddenly, fabulous little fantasy turns into a nightmare. Some MLCers try to return to the marriage. Others spiral deeper, cycling through more and more APs, more chaos, more depression. The AP may leave. They may cling tighter. They may destroy what's left of the MLCers' relationships. It's messy, it's painful, and in most cases, it ends in regret. Hey, if you think you might be having a midlife crisis, go check out the 2-minute quiz at midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. Again, super quick little quiz, totally free. Check it out at midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com.